Sasiem, 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 Yach cow high, Yach cow high, Yach cow high, Yach cow high. Hey, welcome to the Spirit Drum, everybody. This is Coyote Chris Sutton, and tonight, first I have to mention that obviously Sharla's not here with us tonight. Sharla is moving, and so she's in the process of that. She's moving from one state to another, so she is incognito, incommunicado. She can't be with us tonight, but she does send her greetings and her love, and she'll be back next time we're on. I'm very proud to announce tonight that our guest is Witchdoctor Utu, and Utu and I met on another podcast. It was Casey's Cauldron. We met on that. We were both guests on. I'm like, this guy's really fascinating. So I want to, I got to talk more to him. And so here we are tonight. And Utu, man, it's great to have you. Welcome to the show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's good to see you and talk to you again. Yeah, we had a great time on that other show. A loaded topic, right? It was it was all about shamanism, and so it was very interesting.
Yeah. So I've been practicing shamanism for many years, and you've been doing your spiritual path for what, 18, 20 years, something like that.
I was initiated into the British traditional witchcraft lineage in the 90s, mid 90s. But yeah, and then I joined and started serving the Voodoo spiritual temple of New Orleans around year 2000. So somewhere amongst those years, 2000 to 2003, I started to get immersed myself much more in African traditional religions because of being a drummer. That's the only reason I ended up in those traditions. And then for about the last, about 18 years now, despite my workload or my devotion to certain temples, I kind of been spending a lot of time on my own work, which has been ultimately illuminating and elevating spiritual elements of the Underground Railroad. Because that's where I live here in St. Catharines, is at the very end of it. And just out the house here a few blocks away is where Harriet Tubman brought her particular historic route of the Underground Railroad to its very terminus. She lived very close by, and so a lot of the descendants of Underground Railroad freedom seekers are friends of mine. I attend a few services that houses of prayer put on, and so that's what I've been doing mostly for my own personal spiritual work for the last about 18 years. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So now you live in St. Catharines, Ontario. And when I heard that, I thought, well, that's interesting because, Harriet Tubman, of course, is a famous figure here. She's famous and loved for what she did. And this is a part of her that I never knew a thing about. And I find it real interesting. And actually, where I live, we have lots of places that were part of the Underground Railroad. Because I live on the Mississippi River on the Illinois side, and Illinois was not a slave state per se, and then Missouri kind of was. And so people would go to Missouri and come into Illinois and move north from there. And so to hear about Harriet Tubman in this context is really cool. And he referred to her as Mama Moses.
Yeah, that's the spiritual name. I didn't coin the phrase. She was referred to as Mama Moses by elements of fringe black spiritual churches, many, many, many decades ago. But she was referred to for sure as the Black Moses and Moses by her contemporaries at the time, who were predominantly white abolitionists. So they were and they were coining that phrase to her because of her obvious connotations and sort of symbolism of emancipating and bringing people, to their freedom and leading them out of bondage. So the Underground Railroad drew a lot of their code, terminology, and inspiration from the Old Testament, in particular Exodus. So, she became Moses and she loved it. And so, we referred to her as Mama Moses as one of her guises. She has many. There's another title that she is known by, which is General Tubman. And that's what John Brown, the insurrectionist, the famous American insurrectionist, he gave her that name right around the corner from here when he was visiting here to consult with her about the raid on Harper's Ferry. So he coined that phrase and said, I will always call you General Tubman 3 times to get your presence. And so she was always fond of that till the day she died. So she's got many guises, but Mama Moses is truly her spiritual mantle that I choose to always identify her with mostly.
So how does this tie into your spiritual work? your work that you do now, her teachings?
Well, so, I'm in a lucky position. I'm a member of the Dragon Ritual Drummers. I helped found the band, back in year 2000. So we're celebrating 20 years. The Dragon Ritual Drummers had a grand 20-year anniversary planned, traveling at a few locations, but, things happen. So because of that, I'm very privileged that I was able to be invited to a lot of pagan festivals, predominantly in the United States, as well as Canada, of course, where I live. And because of my association with the Voodoo Spiritual Temple of New Orleans, would often teach and share the drum order of service, the order of service, which is akin to the temple and has elements of old New Orleans drumming in it. And so just, it's not uncommon in certain African traditional religions that, heroes are elevated and exalted and for spiritual purposes. And for me, it just seemed that instead of sort of doing the same thing a lot of people that look like me normally do when they begin to teach elements of the ATRs, that it just was amazing to me that right here where I lived was, an actual, spiritual legacy that no one was really paying attention to. And I thought it was interesting because it's American, and I include Canada, North America. It's an American tradition that is unique to me because it houses, white, black, rich, poor, Christian, other, Canadian, American, who are people who in this clandestine, organization that was the Underground Railroad managed to work together despite a great deal of differences in philosophy, but for the right cause. And to me, that was inspiration for true social justice. It represented to me what we see in Haitian Voodoo, elements sometimes of Cuban, Ifa, or even ones from South America, where there's a bit more emphasis on revolution, emphasis on warriors and diviners. And so in America, we just lack that in a way. There's a bit of it housed within New Orleans voodoo for sure, but the rest of America, it seemed to me there was a missing link there that deserved to be exalted, deserved to be illuminated. And, as I started to do some more work around it, come to discover there was many elements of American root work and conjure and hoodoo that people never really realized actually do have its birth within the Underground Railroad, the fight for freedom, all the types of conjures and magics and ceremonies and rituals that people carry and invocations were really about trying to attain freedom, months, if not years on the road alone. And so to me, that was interesting as a student of these traditions to find these missing links. So that was really, and then, to experience what these spirits of the Underground Railroad can help. They can give people blessings towards justice, towards healing, towards, trying to attain insurmountable goals. So it just became this passion and this sort of the wind just kind of blew me there. And it would never have been anywhere I thought I would have been, but it's definitely been a very gratifying journey. That's for sure.
Now you say the wind blew you there. Now I can pinpoint a time 27 years ago where I had an epiphany, what the Buddhists call Satori, where I received this insight. And all of a sudden then the universe kind of figures out what you're up to, and hey, you finally answered your call. And then the doors started opening up for me for receiving teachings and learning all these really cool things. And was there a point in your life like that where all of a sudden, or was it just kind of grew on you, or all of a sudden did something hit you and say, wow, I want to do this?
Well, I think it was, honestly, it did have something to do with members of the Voodoo Spiritual Temple in New Orleans. When I started to be more immersed with them and drumming for them and going through the gauntlet one does to join that temple, you have to kind of go anywhere on the continent that Priestess Miriam and Priest Louis Martinet were very active at one point back then, still teaching around the continent. So I would always show up and be at those places and go through that gauntlet and travel down there. And so a couple of the members came to stay with me for a while. And so it was them that really pointed it out and said, because I had asked, Miriam and them, I was like, oh, I want to learn more. I want to learn more, voodoo quicker and my place in this faster. And they were like, well, you need to focus on the element of voodoo where you live in St. Catharines. Focus on that. And I was like, what voodoo in St. Catharines, And then I had knew about the church, even as a pagan and as somebody already immersed in the African traditional religions, I still didn't really equate that location with that. So that was the epiphany, and my literal proximity to it to be able to throw a stone there to where people were literally buried in backyards unmarked. Just that's when it was. When I became aware of them and they became aware of me and my band, because we rehearsed at my house, that's when the sort of, devotion and true interaction and reciprocity between us began. And so it's more like being guided like I was by spirit, which has been very interesting. As a person who's very analytical like I am, it's been truly unique.
Yeah, I mean, I was agnostic and very scientific, Unitarian. Unitarians don't believe in that kind of stuff and all this kind of stuff that we're doing. And all of a sudden one day it's like, oh my, this is where I got to go and I can't stop myself. And I'm so glad I did. But yeah, it's like you think you have to go travel all these miles and go to these big events that people hold and, spend $100 going to a sweat lodge and that kind of crap. And you don't. Like you said, we have a circle here and just a few miles away where I live. We're having a circle tomorrow. And yeah, a lot of times, it's good to go hear other people's teachings, but your medicine is got to be in your home where you are. And sometimes you have to be one that brings it. In your case, you have a place, but you go out and you carry your message with you. When you go, you become adept in the whole thing, and now you're able to go out and share and attract other people, or at least get them on their own spiritual path. One thing that I've heard that you're talking about that I'm really impressed with, there's like a social justice kind of underlying your devotion and your work and your faith. And that's very good. I mean, it's how does that work? Is that an expected part, or is that something that just you do?
Well, for me, I was lucky. I mean, I was raised a very open way. Being born in another country. I was born in Scotland, so my parents were very about equality and fighting for the right cause. My father was a big activist in the labor movement here in Canada. So I was always raised that way. So, and already being immersed in paganism, definitely opened my eyes to a lot of things. And so for me though, so social justice, for me, that was the whole idea that was unique about it, was that there was an element that I knew already that, because I now had been immersed in Santeria. And so at that point as well, that I could see that there was always, to try to find a way to remind people that root work, hoodoo, voodoo, and conjure are not just sort of exotic, fun, different flavors of some sort of a pagan tradition. They're rooted in struggle. They're rooted in fighting and against the oppressor. And in many ways, people forget there was a lot of interracial connection of many different peoples who were also oppressed that worked together to especially in the Caribbean, to blend what we understand as what the New World African traditional religions are. So it just seemed to me that this was a great way, that the Underground Railroad, to remind people that, we can work together, and that there is some place that people that are various colors, various faiths and classes can fit in as an ally in a tradition, as opposed to feeling like you're an outsider because it's a tradition that's had not existed yet, that is part Canadian, part American, part black, part white, and has all the elements of something that is a great inspiration for people who want to be on the right side of history. However, that being said, the social justice warrior community don't really like me very much. So that was interesting. Really? My book was released. It was very controversial, mostly amongst white social justice warriors and mostly from an enclave in the West Coast. But I was still deplatformed and canceled from the largest spiritual gathering, Pantheacon, where my book was supposed to be released, which was kind of strange. And so that was a bit of a dichotomy that was hard to understand. But what are you going to do? It's all over now. But that definitely was confusing to a lot of people, that something that I was doing would, in full transparency like I was for many years. And bear in mind that, the African traditional religions, not everyone gets along, and there's various figures and people that seem to be influential. But one thing we do know is we all know where each other come from. And if anybody in these traditions, white, black, Hispanic, or other, had any issues with me after 15 years of extremely open across the continent work, they would have said something. In fact, I ended up working with a lot of these people, contemporaries and colleagues, and they helped me in this work. And sort of, so people that are outside of our traditions that had a problem with it is kind of a problem that I think is now very much on the topic of the entire neo-pagan world of people telling folks how or where they should worship. And to me, that's kind of doesn't really gel with certain ideas of freedom and,
Sure.
and honor and expression of what, I get it. People should not be pretending to be something they're not and appropriating something that, for profit. That's obvious. If you're not part of a tradition, you shouldn't be part of it. But that ship sailed a long time ago. There's people that look like you and I, people that look many colors that are immersed in these religions for a very, very long time. So that was the only weird part.
Yeah, and we'll get back to that. We're going to take our first commercial break. You're watching The Spirit Drum on Scarefest Television.
Mama Ruby offers fun vendor-based events that focus primarily on the metaphysical and spiritual aspects of our lives. Well, 2020 didn't go as planned, to say the least. Since Mama Ruby's can't bring the vendors to you in person, they still encourage you to support them online. For links to these and other outstanding artists, craftspeople, vendors, and psychics, visit mamarubies.com and click shop.
Hey, thanks for sticking along with us. I'm Chris Sutton. This is The Spirit Drum, and we have Witchdoctor here with us tonight. And we were just talking about some issues that happened with Utu and about some, he'd written a book and some people didn't like it. And so the place he was going to release the book said, well, you're not welcome here anymore. And I just kind of want to get into that a little bit more because this is the sort of stuff that people face. I've seen people who carry in my tradition who, because they're, they do a certain thing or that people don't like them, and they're also, they become plastic medicine men or things like that. They're called those types of names because, like he and I were talking, we're both white. I'm identified with a tradition that's Native American. Now the path I walk is a tradition that has generally been shared with people of all colors. The Sasiwas medicine. It was a tradition that was built up so neighboring tribes could get along. So it's like a way of peace. And so they've been, the Moses family who my teacher's name is Johnny Moses. They've been teaching that since 1920 to white people and anybody with a good heart. And but still sometimes, and I catch flack every once in a while. I'll get something nasty said to me on Facebook because I'm white. But you got to soldier on. You got to do what you got to do. Now, you're talking about the neo-pagan world and how it's kind of, and it's like the Native American sort of places as well. How's it work for you there now that all of this has happened? Are you still welcome, or you still feel like there's some issues within the society, the neo-pagan world?
Well, again, I was very privileged. I was lucky because I had established a pretty decent, persona that was invited across the continent. Not many people get flown around the continent like I do. So, which is why it was a surprise that California took such offense to me. But and the funny thing is, again, that was a neo-pagan event. When I'm attending African traditional religion events, where sometimes I'm the only white person, or there's plenty of other white people, but that's part of our religions. That's part of the way this is. And nobody is ever going to, keep people of other colors and faiths and cultures out of those religions. But you have to have honor and you have to have respect and do your part to help uplift the community and the traditions you belong to. So once somebody has been in as long as I have, that's been established already. And like I said before, anyone in those traditions, and believe me, I have people that don't like me within our traditions, but they're never going to call me illegitimate or say that I haven't done my work correctly, or many of my teachers are quite renowned. So it's the neo-pagan world which is funny again, because a long, long time ago in the early 2000s, a lot of pagan events that I was traveling to with the Dragon Ritual Drummers had issue with voodoo or root work or conjure being represented. So despite the fact that there were plenty of people of color, ones who taught me or I had met and were colleagues, were already presenting. Not many of them were getting around the whole continent quite like I was. So I used the platform to begin to help educate. And sometimes people who look like us understand a little better when they hear it from other people. So, incurred a lot of, disdain from a lot of elements. Not many, but they were there where they didn't want those traditions represented. And then you fast forward to now where they're telling us who can practice them is quite a unique arc, and so again, in the African traditional religions, there are no issues like this. There's very rarely you're going to hear about anybody having an issue with somebody of another color devoted to the house, devoted to the lineage, devoted to the deities, wherever they may be, because there's many traditions. But in the neo-pagan world, there does seem to be this element, and unfortunately, I'm still welcome, thankfully, at some of the biggest events in the continent. But there still just seems to be this element of people that just won't stop, and it's not just me they have an issue with it. I'm definitely a big lightning rod for it because I fought back for it, and because I didn't just go away. I mean, if anything, being deplatformed and canceled was, there's not many of us that can say we have been. That's usually someone on the right wing. It's usually a right winger that gets, canceled. So I take it as a badge of honor in many ways. And, it just means that to some degree the work, and again, that all happened 2 months, almost 2.5 months before my book was released. They didn't even know much about it. It was just who I was, what I represented, what my name was. And once the book was released, there was no more controversy again. Nobody came even to write bad reviews, even to this day. It's actually quite remarkable. But, and that event, Pantheacon, eventually collapsed. That was kind of the last bit of controversy they could handle. Mine brought a big one. And so a lot of people, again, in the neo-pagan world, a lot of people know who I am and know who the Dragon Ritual drummers are, know who the Voodoo Spiritual Temple is, the other traditions I belong to. So it didn't go over too well. They knew they made a big mistake in that one, but what are you going to do? I'm not going to complain about it. And I also, the funny thing is I understand it. Like, I understand there's nobody more suspicious or questioning of white people in our traditions than me. It's always been that way. I know why I ended up here because of drumming, and it just eventually led me into them more and more, because before the internet was everywhere, if you were a good drummer and you had a couple of friends around you that were also really good and could play the rhythms and had the right drums, you were invited and you were encouraged and needed. The service was asked for. Yeah. So I get it. I understand. I fight that fight, and I've helped call out, like you have, the plastic shaman or the appropriators over many decades. And so, these things happen. To me, it was more unfortunate for other people than me, really, because sold me a lot of books, got me a lot of attention, and at the end of the day, I'm happy about it. That's what happened, and sometimes these things will happen.
Which book was that?
Conjuring. My book is called Conjuring, Harriet Mama Moses Tubman and the Spirits of the Underground Railroad. Okay. It was released 2 years ago. Yeah, it's available on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it. I think there's still a lot of them in a lot of Barnes and Nobles, United States, Indigo. They're in a lot of stores still.
Cool. Yeah, you had another one called Hoodoo and Conjure, I believe.
That was the magazine I did for. I used to write periodically for that for Denise Alvarado. Yeah, which was a great periodical. The Hoodoo Conjure Quarterly. Yeah. Yeah.
It to me, and I have gone through these periods of doubt and like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Even though like I didn't watch Dances with Wolves or something like that and decided I wanted to be a medicine man. But I believe this is that those spirits of our traditions will talk to anybody. They will, if you're there to listen. And if you listen, I'm sorry, I didn't get into this to make money. I didn't get into this to be famous. I serve the medicine. I serve spirit. And this is what talked. I listened to these spirits, and they told me which way to go. And I'm not going to make any excuses for that. I'm not going to apologize for it.
No, and absolutely.
So, I mean, it's just, this is our path. And, I don't care if you like it or not. And I want to respect everything that people say. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to, do something pretty bad to stop me.
It's up to us. It's up to guys like you and I to utilize our unique position, because we belong to religions that are definitely enrooted in people that struggled or been colonized, and so we have that unique ability to cross over. And so it's important for us to make sure that we are really very true, very devout, and educating as best we can, and educating correctly, so that other people don't appropriate steal, adjust, and just kind of take liberty with these traditions. So it's up to us. Sometimes we have a big responsibility to make sure that we're representing our people correctly, and with honor, and gratitude.
I agree with that. You can't, no scandals here. About misappropriating the medicine or charging fees for ceremony and that kind of stuff. It doesn't fly. You're talking about root work and conjure and mysticism, and in your world, what does that mean? Those three words.
Well, root work and conjure are two different terminologies. I mean, right now, there'll probably be some people that have different opinion. It's a semantic. So root work and conjure, though, are traditionally African American euphemisms, especially from late 1800s, early 1900s, when that terminology really took root. It refers to, the elements that had to, again, survive. Now, there's one thing about the slave trade that was predominantly Catholic. If it wasn't the Muslims on the other side of the world who really kind of seemed to always get off on this conversation, but that was the Catholics, the Portuguese, the French, and to some degree, the British, of course, were not. But that's the thing, is that somehow the Catholicism allowed for synchronization. The types of plantations they had, the enslaved had a bit more freedom to some degree, where they were still able to maintain the elements that are required for struggling to hold on to your religions from Africa, because of course they also took people from various different communities and traditions from Western Africa and mixed them all up so they couldn't speak with each other. Like, it was very methodic. The slave trade was methodic. And so, but in America, with the Protestantism, other than Louisiana and for a while, Mississippi and Florida, that Protestantism was so strict, and so there was no ability to have communities drumming or being isolated. It was a very different and much crueler form of controlling the enslaved. So there had to be a way for the African American to now hold on to their tradition, much more of a sorcerer, an individual practitioner, someone who prepared roots, medicines. Most of it was medicine, of course, and elements of magic, animal totemic mysteries that, of course, gleaned from the Native American, elements of folk magic they gleaned from the Europeans, and combined it all together into a way of a predominantly carrier magic, mojo bags, gree bags, roots, things you carry, things that you put in your shoes, things you scatter. And that's what root work and conjure was. It's a way to provide medicine, provide spiritual healing and empowerment through the means of natural implements around us, as well as spiritual forces you can call forth. That just depends on who taught that person. And so that's what root work and conjure is. It's a form of African American mysticism, for sure. And despite the fact that there are parts of it that are European and parts of it that are Native American, absolutely, but it was the African American who put it all together and housed it. And so, and then, of course, there was always white people involved, especially in the South. And then once the Underground Railroad began, up into the North as well, there was just these elements of mysticism, spiritualism that always interceded with each other. And so those are the terminologies, whereas voodoo is a much more, when we think of voodoo, especially we think of drums, and we think of more than one person involved in a ceremony, and there's other people interacting, and there's specific, elevated spirits that are being honored and invoked. And so there are so many different semantics within these traditions.
Sounds a lot like shamanism to me. Some of that is so similar to what our tradition does. When we do healing ceremonies, we put the person in the middle facing the east, and then everybody walks around in drums. And so we've got a circle of people drumming, singing a song, a healing song, and one person will be moved to go do healing, and so we get the smoke going and the candlelight, and it just sounds so much like that. This community type of participation, because all this energy, it's not just one person, doing the healing. It's all these people's energies are all going towards this person for healing and to bring them up. And we talk about the healing spirits and things like that. So, yeah, that's really
that's why there's a great deal of so again, like for me to be immersed in these traditions, the American ones, made me inadvertently have to become a scholar and knowledgeable and Black mysticism of America, which is where a lot of what you just talked about is housed within the Black church. The way the praise houses and the ring shouts, and the way certain parts of the South kept that element of what's traditionally an African form of group working. And so it's to me, it's also very fascinating because, African American and, religion and mysticism in America is kind of very much responsible for, the music of this pop culture of America, rock and roll and jazz coming out of that, and how much that's affected the world. So buried under America, to me, which is also fascinating, is rock and roll and voodoo to me are both like so intrinsically attached to each other and have influenced the culture to now that the pop culture of the world is rock and roll oriented, and that came out of America and specifically New Orleans. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing with New Orleans and music is such a neat study in itself. You could do a bunch of shows on that. We've come up to our next commercial break, Utu, so we'll be right back to you. And you're watching The Spirit Drum on Scarefest TV, and we'll be right back.
Everyone is talking about CBD oil, and it seems like almost everyone is using it. The research is ongoing, but the apparent health benefits are overwhelming. If you're going to use CBD products, though, what brand should you buy? First, find out where the hemp was grown. Imports are flooding the market. How potent is it? Look for a brand that plainly states its concentration on the label. And look for full spectrum CBD. This means the oil contains CBD and all the other cannabinoids, terpenes, and nutrients that are found in the entire cannabis plant. Look for Blue Leaf CBD oil. Blue Leaf Naturals is a Kentucky proud company. They use only Kentucky-grown hemp, supporting Kentucky farmers and businesses. Visit their website at blueleafcbd.com now and use the code SMILE at checkout for free shipping.
Horror. Movie. Fans. 4. Life. Find us. 4. News. 4. Memes. 4. Life.
People out there, they got a little bit of knowledge. Hey, and we're back to the Spirit Drum. This is guy, Chris Sutton. We're talking to Utu Witchdoctor tonight. And we were talking, Utu, about, conjure and root work and how similar it is to a lot of traditions. Now, the word conjure brings people to mind like magic, spells, and things like that. Are there specific ways of doing conjure, or is that not even really part of your definition of it?
Well, yeah, of course, the word conjure, evokes many things. In America, where in the African American, the Black American coined the phrase, it was conjure. It was what they referred to as their form of sorcery, their form of magic. And so, yeah, when certain roots are carried, certain herbs are carried, certain spells are done, originally it was to help escape slavery, attain your freedom in the North, or to avoid, a discipline that was going to be tortured upon you by, the slavers. It was always, or to try to bring good luck. These is what this was. And so everything that they used, and to this day still use, was herbs, roots, elements of things that you could evoke spirits from, or spirits down from, up from, and carry on you and help, bring luck, love, lust, power into your life. So there is still definitely elements of magic, and indeed, like magic as we would define it with a K, like a definitely formulaic, things that have been passed down, but it was different from region to region. The way conjure was in Dallas, or in Texas, was very different from how it was in Mississippi or Louisiana. Different again how it was up in Missouri or in Michigan and in New York, like wherever the pockets were of people that either escaped slavery or then moved through the Great Migration, early 1900s, the population of the Black South that moved north brought and rooted again. And so it's literally people do have degrees in this thing. They go to school for it because it's such an interesting topic. But so that's what conjure really kind of intonates, is that it's a form of magic, sorcery, sometimes veneration of something higher, and using all forms of things. And quite often the Bible was used, as a form of invocation. Looking through the book for spells and as a grimoire, so to speak. And that's why there's elements sometimes of the Bible within hoodoo and root work and conjure.
That's cool. So, yeah, I guess I just love. I mean, because I have a friend named Gwen Allen. She was on the show a few months back, and she practices voodoo. She's out in Las Vegas now. She says a lot of the same things, but there are some differences. And but like it's like the Native American traditions as well. What I practice is going to be totally different than like the Sioux practice, Lakota practice, or the Crow practice. And there are similarities, but there's lots of differences. And so you kind of stick to your medicine and do it, respect it and work it the way that you were taught. And I'm real big on that myself. This is how I was taught. I'm going to follow that. And because my teachers, I had very good teachers, and I still do have very good teachers, and I respect that. And so I will never do anything to disrespect what they have shown me. And I kind of skirt the edges. Sometimes I'll have to call them up and say, because we're not supposed to do stuff at night, medicine-wise, particularly. But I called. I was actually in New York. I wasn't too far from you. I was in Hinsdale, New York, there, and there's
wow.
Yeah, and we had my friend of mine owns a haunted house there, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty well known, called the Hinsdale House.
Oh, okay,
and,
okay.
Yeah, Dan's a friend of mine, and there are things in the hills around it. I thought the outside was 10 times more spooky than the inside was, because not really spooky, but more active. There's all these spirits and native spirits, and you got elementals and all these things going on, and it was like But I knew I was doing stuff like that because I was doing paranormal stuff. I wouldn't do a lot of shamanism except for maybe the psychic part of it. But then, I'm going to start drumming. I'm going to get people in circles, and we're going to tell the spirits how much we care about them. We want to hear their stories. We're not the colonialists. We're the ones that feel for you what happened, and they're very responsive to that. But like I said, our tradition's not normally done outside at night, so I had to ask my teacher Johnny. I said, "Okay, how do I get around this? I don't want to disrespect you." And he goes, "You need to make sure you're wearing an altar," which is to us is like this, a headband, around either your neck or the top of your head. And so you always see me with that on, because that's what I was told to do. An altar is what when we're doing circle, we put out there to put our sacred things on, the water, the cedar, the light, the candles. And so it's like I'm wearing that. I've got an altar on me,
right,
to protect me. And so that's how I do it. Now, looking at your really cool establishment there. Now, how would you describe? Because it's not just a house that you're sitting in there. It's much more. And can you explain what all that's about?
Well, so because I live at the end of the Underground Railroad, my house is called it's not a big house. It's a World War II era cottage. And so it's called the Niagara Voodoo Shrine. And so it's big enough for me to host people and have small crowds in here. So the whole house is built like a, hang on one second, I got to plug something in. The house is designed much like a spiritual temple, which I belong to. So we adorn our whole house.
On the show. There he is.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, dude, I'll tell you what, I am like, in Wes and I have worked together for years, and he does Scarefest television. The show was on before this, and this happens all the time when I'm on the show. Something blows up. It never fails. I was just, while you're on, I was just thanking everybody that's come by to watch. And it's hard for me to watch the chat tonight, folks, because it's just me. If Sharla's here, she's usually watching the chat. And Sharla's watching. Good, kid. Glad you're out there. And I hope your move's going okay. But yeah, okay. What were we talking? Okay, we're talking about your place there, the Niagara.
Yeah, so it's just
Niagara Voodoo Shrine.
Yeah, it's a Niagara Voodoo Shrine, and so it's not uncommon for people in our tradition like myself, who's clergy, to have a house and to have a place that, I do divination in here. It's basically my workstation, my work home. So the whole house is dedicated to the Underground Railroad. It's kind of also, I guess, in many ways, when people come in here, it's kind of a miniature museum in ways. So there's a lot of things that are all about voodoo, root work, Conjure, Underground Railroad. The whole house is designed that way. So, that's what it is. It's just I have a bedroom that's kind of normal and a bathroom that's kind of normal. And that's, but I work out of the kitchen. The rest of the house is one big shrine. And that's not uncommon. And that's just because the teachers that I grew up with learning, this is how we do it. And this is how our home, if we have a home of this nature, not everybody will. Some people just have one area in their place, but my fate was to be a reader and to be, a place to provide service for when people needed it. So that's why this place looks like this. It's got a very, colorful approach. And that's because there's a lot of altars, a lot of shrines in here, and a lot of things that I need to have access to. And so it's also for people when they come in here, it's something to look at. Yeah. And but it's done in reverence. It's done to honor and provide what is necessary for me to work.
Right. And it's like, now at my house, it's just it's the room I'm sitting in. That's all I get. My wife Julie, who also goes by Mrs. Coyote sometimes, does not want crystals and feathers and dream catchers all over the house. So okay. I get my little room here, and that's it used to be my daughter's bedroom, so I finally got my own little room. And so yeah, we do okay. We coexist pretty well with it now. So at the Voodoo Shrine, I mean, you do teachings and things. Is that true? Is that you teach people there? Is it this kind of place?
Well, yeah. I mean, I usually do readings here, so people come here for consultations, readings, cleansings, work like that. Because as a witch doctor, which is one of the titles that I have, that is basically uncrossing people, removing spiritual conditions they may have, getting rid of bad witchcraft, so to speak. So that keeps me busy. When I do have people that are under my tutelage, which I am very selective, of course, and for time as well. But this is where we spend most of our time. I do a lot of teaching at a place called Cat and Monkey Events in Niagara Falls, my friend's business, where that's kind of the hub of the community, where all spiritual communities intercede. Teach a lot in another town over at White Flame Company in Hamilton. And then from there, I kind of just if I get invited to various people's stores, of course, when the border was open, I would travel the United States quite a bit because, there's a circuit in the pagan world and the Voodoo and Conjure world where these events happen. And, there's certain people get invited to teach or perform at them. And I fall into the branch of two. I perform with the Dragon Ritual Drummers, and wherever we go, we present and we want to share something. And so luckily my guys are all really cool about the idea that the Underground Railroad is the legacy of our town. And so it is worth sharing. And we're the rest of the guys are honorary members of the Voodoo Spiritual Temple as the drum guard. So we play and teach those rhythms from the Voodoo Spiritual Temple as well. And so just to sort of keep them alive and teach other people how they're done.
All right. I got you. The Dragon Ritual Drummers. What do you do? I mean, drumming, I know. I got a drum here within arm's reach. Okay, I know drumming. What is your purpose? Why do you go out and drum?
Well, so our drums that we use predominantly are djembes, right? It's the djembe and our bass section is the big zoom-zooms. Originally, because of the idea when the late 90s, early 2000s, or especially the 90s, when the pagan festival circuit started to arrive, much more open to people, that was always the most intriguing thing for a lot of people, was the big fire pit every night. People would gather and all the drumming would happen and the dancing. And so because I was already a drummer and I really gravitated towards it. And then, that just seemed to be the thing that attracted the guys in my area in the late 90s. So the Dragon Ritual Drummers are formed out of a thing called the Niagara Pagan Men's Circle, and that's 25 years old. So the first 5 years or 4 years was, that was kind of the highlight of us meeting once a month, was to drum around a fire and establish trust amongst the men in the community, within an hour or two's drive. And so eventually a core of us decided, well, let's form something orchestrated, something that is, and ultimately what we did as our name is because of all things to honor in Niagara Falls an ancient horned serpent. Now, this will be something that you're probably familiar with, that there are these various ancient horned serpents that some Native American nations consider nefarious, some still venerate. They have an interesting history. And in Niagara Falls, the original inhabitants of the Niagara region, who are called the Niagara, which is where the name Niagara comes from, they predated many of the other nations and tribes that arrived here. So they spoke a different language. And eventually the Iroquois wiped them out because they were kind of neutral, and they're called neutral Indians in books. So there was a horned serpent, a giant serpent that was venerated and placated in Niagara Falls. And when the Iroquois took over the region, in their mythos, their lightning god slayed that giant serpent.
Gotcha.
And so for us, that was kind of like, I understood that that's because of a new ideology. And so, someone taking over and putting their deity on top of another. Mm-hmm. So that's what we named ourselves. We said, let's just do this one show that honors that serpentine energy of Niagara Falls. And then we're done, right? Sounds good. And we all agreed. And we had these socials, these pagan socials, and then it just took off from there. And then we got invited on a radio show that heard about it. And then we said, let's record a CD. That'll do it, right? We'll just record a CD, and then we can just move on. And then they just didn't. And now we look back, and here we are still, then we became sort of like, leaders in the drumming world for the pagan community. And it's just, it was another one of those crazy, whimsical manifestations that when the wind is going there, you don't go against it. You see where it takes you, and where it's taken us has been all over the continent, and incredible things. We've been so blessed and to experience it.
That's what I was talking about earlier, about when you hit something, you're doing something you're supposed to be doing with your spiritual self, doors start open, and it seems almost easy that it's happening. So, okay, we've got one more commercial break. Utu will be right back, and you're watching The Spirit Drum on Scarefest Television.
Spirit Mechanics is here to help. Their background includes many different specialties across the metaphysical spectrum, including alchemy, shamanism, Celtic witchcraft, angelic magic, astral travel, and more.
With over 30 years combined experience in the group, you can be confident in their ability to help. If there is a question you have that you cannot answer, they will do their best to assist you.
Metaphysics can be intimidating, confusing, and unfortunately, abused. Spirit Mechanics takes pride in being selfless in the pursuit of helping others, being humble and honest with their clients about their questions, and lastly, maintaining a professional and personable atmosphere. They want you to feel as you are coming to a close friend, and they will do everything in their power to make you comfortable and safe.
When the drum beats, we hear the call of spirit. Join Coyote Chris Sutton and Sharla Hardin as they discuss the different spiritual paths with those who walk them. Monthly on ScarefestRadio.com. Watch the Scarefest Facebook page for updates.
Hey, we're back with Utu Witchdoctor. And again, I want to thank everybody who's watching the show on Facebook. I love it. Thank you all very much. And I will reply to anything you said after the show, because this is such a great interview. I can't be like going like this and typing out stuff and whatnot. So you hit this. We were talking about when you do things spiritually, and all of a sudden things start seeming easy. It means you're doing the right thing. And so that was kind of like. I don't believe in predestiny and things like that, but I believe that we are all given medicine, our spiritual gifts, and when we start using those in the right way, and then things start happening. Things, I'm not sure when you were growing up with things. I mean, all of us, I think, have had some rough patches in our life that has led to us to be. It seasons you in a way, and it. What I always tell people, and I'm sure you do too, talk to a lot of people who have suffered a lot of hardship, divorces, bad childhoods, and things like that. And I always tell them, it's like, okay, you can get through this because this is what happens. We go through these things in our life so we can heal and find out what our medicine is and heal ourselves first, and then learn to heal others. So when that next person who was in the same situation you were in holds out a hand, you'll be ready to grab it.
That's right. That's
bring
right.
it back. So when you do readings, when you do medicine work, what is that like? I mean, I can't imagine you doing regular tarot readings and things like that. I mean, I use tarot cards and things, but it's not. I'm not a fortune teller. It's for another purpose.
Yeah, I used 3 different oracle decks. One of them was designed by one of my mentors, Louis Martinet, the New Orleans Voodoo Tarot, but it's an oracle deck. But I still use a different system that's in front of me, like the Congo cosmogram, which is a symbol that I use, and I use shells and bones as well among that. So I use multiple things once the person comes in the house to talk a little bit. Almost always it's going to be about more, their spiritual issues, how they can, deal with things that are affecting them, how to placate something in the universe or the world around us to open their roads, and to move forward, deal with healing, trauma, and all these elements. And it shows up in the divination. At some point you can tell, well, this is how this might work out for you. But I'm not really much of a, love is coming. Now, we'll say that sometimes, but luckily in our traditions, it hopefully shows you what we can do magically, spiritually, to bring the love to us, or to, get to our next destination of prosperity or, purpose. So that's my divination system, is a combination of things where, it's to help people get to where they need to go and to deal with the things that are maligning them, if there is something that's maligning them.
That's exactly it. I've had more people sit down and say, who are obviously not where they need to be. And they say, when am I going to meet my soulmate? Which means, when I hear that, when is somebody going to rescue me from my life? And I look at them very sincerely. I said, all you're going to attract right now is negative people, because they're going to come in and take advantage of you, because you're hurting and you're vulnerable. When you start changing your attitude around, when you start feeling good about yourself, when you start getting more self-confidence, when you heal yourself, you will attract that person that you're wanting. But nobody's going to there's no most 99% of the time, there's no knight in shining armor is going to come right up and rescue you from the dragon. That's not going to happen.
That's right. And
it's about looking at yourself and changing your life yourself, because if you can't stand on your own 2 feet, then somebody's just going to take advantage of you.
That's right.
And I've seen it happen so many times. As far as doing healing work and your readings, somebody asked me this one time, and I thought it was such a cool question, so it took me a while to come up with an answer. But can you think of one time where it's like you're almost kind of like amazed about what happened? And when I say amazed, I mean like not that you didn't believe it. It's like, wow, I've never seen that before. That's, spirit is truly powerful.
I don't know. I see a lot of crazy things and have experienced a lot of crazy works with people. And so I'm not sure I could pick one in particular, but at least once a week, if not during the consultation or shortly thereafter, someone will contact me and then I will even be amazed, and that's what I always was told from my teachers, was like, if you just start taking this for granted, when you see true manifestation and things, and you just, then, maybe this isn't, for you. So I still, the type of person I am, when I come home from a mediumship event or something like that, I'll come home at night and I will sit and quiet and try to ponder, okay, exactly how did this just happen? And so that always amazes me. It's usually certain nights like that, how to try to, and then, the path of a crazy mystic is, you got to kind of keep it a little light for me, because if you take yourself too seriously, you start believing a lot of in own hype. But so I think almost the whole process is what is amazing to me, to just know that we're sitting on the precipice of multiple realities where spiritual forces can communicate and intercede in humans, and how it's some of our jobs to try to divine that and pass that on and follow that whim. And once we're doing that, we're on another road altogether that doesn't fit in with the rest of society. So that's to me already, I'm so long past, like, how did I get here? And I do think about it a lot, but I can't think of any one particular thing that stood out, because at least once a week I go, wow, okay. And I look around the house and I go, all right. Yeah, that was different, or that's pretty intense. It always keeps me surprised. It always keeps me, keeps me religious. I always like to say, that's what keeps me religious.
It humbles you real fast. And my thing is, I'm going to let spirit come in and I'm going to get the heck out of the way, because it's not about me. It's about the spirit. I'm just lucky enough, or blessed enough, however you want to call it, that I listened and have trained myself and have other people train me on how to allow that energy to come through me and to help other people. But it does have a way of keeping you humble. I remember the first time, and this was, back in 1995 probably, I was living up at a town north of here, and I had this Mohegan Indian friend of mine, Gun Hollingsworth, who in Chicago, who had taught me how to do tarot and Native American tarot decks. So I had some friends that had a coffee shop in town in Kankakee where we lived, and so they let me do some readings one night. You know, it was first time ever. And they were friends of ours. So yeah, go ahead and give it a shot. So I charged like $5 a reading, you know, and so I made like $20, and everybody seemed real happy with it. Nobody called me a charlatan or anything like that. So I'm like, yeah, you know, I got some money in my pocket. I'm a professional. You know, I'm all this and I'm all that. I'm thinking to myself, I get home and everybody's in bed asleep. I look in the sinks full of dirty dishes because it's my night to do the dishes. You know, no, you ain't nothing's champ. You go wash your dishes, and you know, you save the celebrating for later. And
yeah,
I mean, it didn't totally rob me of the experience, but it put it into perspective. You know, before I was enlightened, I did chop wood and carry water. After I was enlightened, I have to chop wood and carry water. And so
it's a great euphemism. It never gets old. It's so true all the time.
Those Zen guys have it together. I love reading like D.T. Suzuki stuff. Just, you know, because I did a lot of, like you did, I did a lot of reading because I meet a lot of different people and from different religions, different backgrounds. So I learned, you know, I didn't grow up a Christian, so I had to learn all that stuff. So I've had none. They tend to have a good time, but you know, it's just like you got to know all these different things. And so I enjoyed that part of my journey where I was reading all sorts of different things. So Utu, let's say somebody wanted to get a hold of you, or you know, and or schedule something, or maybe invite you to an event. How would they find you?
Best way, I mean, these days, because I don't have a website because I'm too busy as it is. I tell people, so Facebook is the best way to find me. Facebook or Instagram, and it's either Witchdoctor Utu or Utu Witchdoctor. I'm the only one on either of the systems. UTU Witchdoctor. Dragon Ritual Drummers, same thing. I'm the one that monitors the Dragon Ritual Drummers Facebook page and things like that. So if people, you know, need to contact me, you know, that's the way. And I get a lot of emails and messages from people, whether it's from the book or just people that come across me anyway. So I'm usually attainable. I usually answer messages if someone sends them. And so anyone wants to get a hold of me like that, that's the best way to find me. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, our producer here tonight, he manages my website. So if you ever get the idea you want to go that route someday, you can talk to Wes. He does a really nice job. You got any events coming up? I mean, you know, usually I'm busy all year long, it seems like, but this year everything's been co-voided.
Funnily enough, you know, I guess you get the literal, you know, the breaking news. Yeah. So because of the way everything is with COVID-19, but in the Niagara region, Canada, where we live, it's actually okay. Like we're doing pretty good, and we can have events. Outdoors, no more than 100 people. Inside, no more than 50. But we are having, because I'm usually in Salem every Halloween with the band for the Festival of the Dead. So this year we're doing an entire month of events, the whole month of October in Niagara Falls, called Season of the Witch. And every weekend there's classes, workshops by all of the local witches and workers of the region. So we all collaborated to throw something down. The city of Niagara Falls already said, go for it. You can do a witches mass on Halloween night right on the promenade. And so they're giving us full reign, which is amazing when you think about it. You know, we kind of take for granted that the city of, you know, like we have a lot of well-known spiritual people here in the region. And so we've done a lot of work over the years where they know, sure, let them do it. And so the whole month of October, I'll be hyping all over my page. People are going to get tired of seeing it. The Season of the Witch, we're going to be dropping the information probably tomorrow. And it's a whole month of interesting things that are coming out, classes and hands-on workshops. And so it'll be fun.
Yeah. Dude, that's so cool. Listen, the next time I'm in that New York, I get to New York State about once a year usually. So I'm planning on going back next May. So maybe we can meet up or something.
Yeah, you'll be sometime. Close.
Yeah, so because my friend lives in Buffalo, that's where I always fly into Buffalo. And the first time I went there, he took me to the falls. I'd never seen the falls before like that. That was so cool. But I'm not exactly an accomplished. I travel some places, but okay, Utu, man, it was so good to have you on.
Thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate it. And you know, I it's so good to see you, and because you know I know good spirit when I see them, and so it's been really nice to look at you as we talk and just. You know, and just see what a great soul you have, and that makes me feel happy. And you know, I wish you and your family, all the best of love and blessings, and stay safe, man. And you know,
I totally appreciate that, dude. And like I said, this is not our last meeting. We'll meet again.
You got it, brother.
All right. Well, listen, folks, everybody, thanks for watching, and thanks to our guest Utu, who was just amazing. And we're watching The Spirit Drum on the Scarefest Television Network. And I want to thank our producer, Wes Forsythe, and his lovely wife, Anita, for all their hard work in making this happen, because I know it's way past his bedtime. It's time he's got to get up and cut hay in the morning or something, I'm sure. So, again, thanks very much for watching. This is The Spirit Drum.
All right. All the best, everybody.
CSACM.